Okay, so let's have a look and see how this could possibly be used in a classroom in a lesson. So the first example that I've made is to help learners understand what classroom dynamics should they be working in. Is it individual work? Is it paired work? Is it group work? And it follows the pattern think, pair, share. This could be on the top of the slide, and then when the teacher decides that it's individual work, they click on it, and the learners know that they should be working individually and really trying to think for themselves. Later, the teacher may click on the pair to help the kids know they're now working in pairs. And then finally, after they've worked in pairs for a while, you may decide to get everyone to share their ideas together. These can be clicked on and off, and are made by just having, well, I've got two objects here. One that's greyed out, one that's coloured in for each, and I've got triggers to make the greyed out ones appear and disappear. So you see, when I click on a greyed out object, it disappears. When I click on the coloured object, it reappears, which, if they're overlapped, it has this effect. So that's the first example. Second example is one from a maths lesson. You'll find a lot of the examples come from maths lessons because I'm a maths teacher and a huge maths geek. But I'll try to also show some more widely used examples. You'll find quickly with triggers that when you start to think of one example or way to use it, you'll immediately think of tens and tens and hundreds and thousands of more. So this example is a small starter activity, and it's for learners to predict whether fractions will be terminating or non-terminating. What will happen is that the teacher will ask students to suggest ones which will be terminating. The students can then suggest any fraction. So they might say a half, which you click, and it's got a triggered motion path to bring it into the box. But the next student doesn't have to predict what will happen to a sixth. They could turn and say a tenth. So this is quite useful because in a normal PowerPoint, you're stuck with one direction, one motion. It's very, very linear. The learners have to go in the order that you've already predefined. Adding triggers adds a bit more flexibility so that the child who understands that a third is non-terminating can say that. People can wait and leave the ones they're uncertain of until the very end. So that's made just by having shapes. This number, a half shape, has a motion path which just moves it. It's moving it from here to here, so for that I just inserted a motion line, motion paths lines, and then you just pick where do you want the arrow to actually move and end up. So I wanted it to go there. So we can have a look at another example from the same lesson. In this exercise, again, the students are deciding which terminate. Then they also have to try and think about what they have in common. This was given as a homework activity, and I find that the triggers work quite well if you want the pupils to actually be controlling the animations for themselves. So again, if they click in the screen, nothing happens. When they click on the hint, if they want a hint, well, that gives them their first hint. They're trying to work out which the terminating fractions are, and that's now shown them which are the terminating fractions. They now need to decide, why is it that these ones terminate whereas those ones don't? Again, they'll hopefully take some time to try and come to their own conclusions. There's a hint to help them out, which hopefully now, even if you're thinking about this for yourselves, you're getting an idea of what is it that makes a fraction terminate. There's some extra extension material which they can click. If they've figured it out, they can give themselves some extra questions. And you see that it allows for a reasonable amount of autonomy, which is quite nice. The one problem with this at the moment is that if you want to move on to the next slide, clicking won't do that. If you press the arrow key, it will still work, but what might be useful is to have a button that will take us to the next slide. The easiest way to do this would be to go Insert, Shapes, and you see these action buttons at the bottom, a forward or next action button, which I can put it in, is going to hyperlink to the next slide. I can add some text. And so now in our slideshow we've got our hints, we've got our extension, and when they're done they can click on next and be taken to the next page, which might be the answers. The final example I'd like to show you is again maths related. The purpose of this was a kind of plenary activity where learners had to ask questions to narrow the shapes down, looking at the properties of the shapes. Some examples of questions that could be asked were, does the shape have right angles? And I had already picked the shape in advance, and I could tell you no, it doesn't have right angles. So the learners would then have to click on the various shapes to eliminate ones which don't meet our criteria. Could be, does the shape have parallel lines? The answer was yes, so that would help narrow it down further. And again, you can just keep using these triggered animations. They, on a click, they spin away until we're left with the final shape, which was in fact a parallelogram. This animation was all very, very easy. It's just each picture had a trigger to tell it to pinwheel away. The shape which actually was correct is illustrated on the next slide, and one additional thing I did was made it so that when you click on this shape B, it automatically moves to the next slide. To do that, you just right click on the shape and you add a hyperlink, and you can add a hyperlink to any other slide in your document. So this was to slide number 8, so that when it's clicked it takes you to slide number 8. So this example, which is kind of a similar Guess Who type game, I'm going to be following up on in the next post, looking about how to create a similar game to this, much like the popular Guess Who. Otherwise, I think this turned into quite a long post in the end. Hopefully it's been useful. Any questions and comments, feel free to leave on the website, thegeekyteacher.co.uk, and I hope you've enjoyed watching.